You're listening to the Radical Transformation Speaker Salon, hosted by Nicole Harlow. 4 days worth of transformational interviews, meditation, and surprises designed to rock your world and change your life. Your year of soul discovery and wild metamorphosis starts today.
Hi everyone, Nicole Harlow here. And today on day 4, the final day, I'm speaking with Hayley Wintermantle. Hayley, for years, she successfully climbed the corporate ladder, yet with each step up, she was always left feeling the same way, disappointed. She'd look at her boss and think, I never want your job. She tried various solutions, working for better companies, working in the nonprofit sector, living and working abroad for numerous years, and she was always seeking out new opportunities and projects to placate the hunger. The truth is that even after the money, the travel, the relocation, none of it really made a difference, at least not in the long run. Every time she tried something new, a few months down the line, she was always itching for more. So, what did she do? She faced up to it, she stopped listening to people telling me that no job was perfect, she refused to squeeze her talents into their tick box, and stopped determining her worth based on how many hours she worked or emails she received. She had enough of everyone else defining what she should or shouldn't do. She stepped off the ladder, quit her job, and moved to Italy for a while, all to invest some serious time in herself. She started focusing again on the things she enjoyed, like good food, wine, meeting new people, learning a new language. She tried to regain focus, balance, perspective, and clarified what she really wanted from her life, not just from her work. She explored what she was truly interested in, passionate about, and how she wanted work to make her feel. She explored where her natural strengths lay, the impact she wanted to make, and the type of environment that would allow her to do so. She worked on all of those niggling voices holding her back and used everything she'd experienced in her years as a coach, trainer, and personal development expert in the corporate world to put in place a strategy. Then she gave herself permission to take the steps to make it happen. And this is how she could also help make it happen for you. Because you have your own blend of passion, strengths, and skills, and only when you identify and apply these in the right environment can you truly make the impact you're looking for. True satisfaction does start from within. Hayley really, believes that you're capable of so much more, and she wants to help you get there. You don't need to quit your job tomorrow or even move to Italy to do it, but you do need to be willing to do the work to make a change. And if you're not sure you feel ready, then honestly, neither was she. Turns out action really is the only remedy for fear. And I really believe that wholeheartedly. Hayley does some great work with career coaching, and I want to just jump right into the interview so I can get Hayley to start talking about herself. So I think a good place to start off is, why don't you just take some time to tell everyone who's listening about who you are and, what you create in the world or how you're called to serve your clients, some things like that.
Okay, so I left my corporate job last November, and I've set up my own business, which is essentially helping women to explore more about who they are and what it is they want, in particularly from their career, but from their life. And this basically came from my own experience over the past year, but it's probably been going on a lot longer than that, of never really quite feeling satisfied. I'd kind of go from job to job, getting promoted, great opportunities. I went to work in Paris for a couple of years.
Oh, nice.
But each time it kind of felt like it wasn't quite right. I don't know if you know what I mean. It was like, oh, this should be amazing. Like this, like it's like I love Paris. I've lived in France before. I speak French. Absolutely adore it.
Yeah.
But there was just something about the work that I was doing just wasn't quite right. And I ended up coming back to the UK. I took on another job, again, travelled internationally, went to work in India, travelled over Europe, doing all the things that I thought, again, that I wanted. And then within about 12 months, well, actually, it's probably about 3 months of being back in the UK, I realised that actually it wasn't what I wanted. and started to work out really what I did want. But that kind of came through exploration, really, a lot of reading. And I kind of hit that point that I think quite a lot of us go through when you suddenly start to realize, okay, it's not about the external stuff, it really is the internal. And start asking yourself those questions about what it is that what you want, what you're here to do. And so I'm using my experience to help other people explore some of those questions to get to the root, really, of what it is that they actually want.
So when you were doing your corporate job and traveling and all that stuff, it started out as just a feeling, right? It was just there was just something not right about it.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I absolutely loved kind of the concept of it and principles of it. So I was in organizational personal development, so training. So I loved the side of helping people. I never quite fitted into the political, as I'd call it, the internal politics of organizations, because I'm kind of the person that wants to do my own thing. Yeah. I don't mind being on my own. I love interacting with people. I can happily just kind of put my head down and get on with stuff.
Oh, I'm really the same, yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of felt that when I was within organizations that I was having to play this game of, making those relationships with people and influencing and doing all this stuff, and only to find actually that decisions would be changed. And I don't know, I just always felt like I was never quite the right fit. And people would always talk about, well, what's your next step? This is the career path, this is the career path. And I thought, well, I don't want any of that. It's not what I want. So I think I thought it was more around the career stuff. But as I started to dig, I realized that it was maybe more about me in the world, if you like, and how I was showing up. So not just at work.
Was it more of a slow trajectory to, the idea of becoming an entrepreneur and starting your own business? Was it a slow trajectory, or was there a defining moment when you really were right, this is what I'm going to do?
Yeah, so it was pretty much a bit of a leap. So basically what I decided was probably about 6 months into the new job, I knew that I was going to leave within about another 6 months. So I started having conversations at home around financial stuff, trying to work out what was going on. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was really torn at the time. I had boyfriends in Italy, so I was thinking about moving out there. Then I wanted to travel. I've always wanted to go to South America.
Oh, me too. I was just talking about that.
It's on my list. It's been on my list for years. I've done Asia, I've done India, I've done bits of North America, I've done all over Europe, and I've just never got to South America.
Oh, I know, it's calling me too.
Yeah. So it was kind of what do I do? And I was really kind of searching for the answer of what's the answer? Do I go and teach in South America? What do I do? What do I do? And then somebody just said to me, maybe you just need to stop. Maybe you don't need to know what you need to do next. Maybe you just need to stop. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. And I've never been like that. I've always been what's next? What's next? What's next? More. Progression, development, growth, all this stuff. And he was like, maybe you just need to stop. So literally I stopped. I negotiated, handed my notice. It took a couple of months to get there. I went and spent some time in Italy, and then through that, what I did basically for a whole month was nothing. It was absolutely amazing.
Oh, wow.
I started to meditate. I read books. I started to learn Italian. I went out, I socialized, made new friends, did all this stuff that classically maybe your parents be like, what the hell are you doing? But it was what I needed to do. And as I stopped, then this idea around, okay, well, maybe I can work for myself. And then I started to explore it. And it literally kind of just came from that, thinking about what do I enjoy? What am I good at? I'd had a lot of people that had come to me. People have always kind of come to me for career advice because, I was in the HR world. And people have been coming to me saying, I'm just not happy with my job. I don't know what it is. I want to change. And so it started really from that. And I just looked at what I knew I was good at and what I enjoyed and thought about, okay, well, how can I make this work as a business?
It's like, it makes me think of like your well was running dry at the job that you were doing and you weren't that happy, and that time in Italy where you just didn't do anything. It was like enough space and stillness to then fill the well, and then all these, so I find like all these great ideas start to come in when you give yourself that self-care time to just sit and be and read and enjoy.
Yeah. And it's very much being, people would ask me all the time, well, what are you going to go and do? What are you going to go and do? And I remember saying to my coach at the time, and I said, God, everyone keeps asking me what I'm going to do. And she was like, just tell them you're just going to go be for a while. Yeah. And I was like, that's a perfect answer. Because I think when you're somebody who is a kind of a high achiever, someone that wants success, it's so driven by success being based around career and education. That's all I've kind of known. And I could feel that was actually having an impact on my health and my relationship. Work often came before relationships, both like with partners, with family. Work was really important to me because that's how I measured my success. And so removing that from my life for that space of time meant that I started to look at, okay, well, what are the other things actually that I want to do? What is important to me? Because, your work and your career and your business is only one part. And I find that we don't value so much the other parts.
Yeah. Oh. So I'm curious, is that besides this, the time of leaving your job and starting your own business, is there another time period in your life that really stands out as like a period of transformation? By that meaning, like, was there something you did, whether it was like traveling or even meeting someone, or it could even be like a book that you read or an experience that you had where the finished product, the you that came out of it, bared very little resemblance to the person that you were before?
I think the biggest turning point in my life, if you like, other than this year, which has just been kind of crazy development, but I spent a year, I did French as my degree, and as part of that you have to go abroad for a year. And I spent a year in France, and
this was before you worked in Paris.
So this was when I was about 21, between 20 and 21, so quite a few years ago now. And what it did is it just opened my eyes up to, I think it gave me that independence of being in another country where, I spoke the language, but what you get taught at school is not, is not anything about real life language. Having to go out there, having to find my own place to live. I'd already got work set up, but having to establish myself in a culture, a completely different culture. And it just, I think I found my freedom in that year. And I think I found myself in the sense that I started to really understand what I knew, what was important to me. And so a lot of the things that maybe things at university, the going out, the socializing, all that kind of stuff, by the time I came back, it was in a completely different light. And it's really hard to describe, but I think when you put yourself in a completely different environment, it allows other parts of you to come out that haven't been able to, because you're so conditioned by what you've seen and experienced. And I mean, university is exactly that type of place where you kind of get caught up in other people's world, and I don't know, you mold into your environment, which is anywhere. So when you're completely taken out of that and put in somewhere new, and you are completely on your own, it's probably the first time I'd ever been on my own, really, really on my own. And so I think it just opens you up to really start to think about who you are and what's important for you, and worry less about what other people are doing.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's, whether it's traveling or not, it doesn't have to be traveling. I just think that what you said about taking yourself out of your comfort zone and what you're used to and putting yourself in a completely new experience can be such a catalyst for transformation for anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, I think something that really comes up for me in my history, like with my own personal transformation, is a kind of a similar story in that I graduated from university and did my last final. I didn't go to my graduation ceremony or anything. I just like handed in my last final, and then the next day I got on a plane and flew to Greece and worked that summer at a yoga studio for the summer. And that experience of it was the first time that I was really on my own, and it was the first, like, I would say that up until that point I had a budding spiritual practice. So like I had done a bit of yoga. I wasn't teaching yoga at that point. I wasn't certified yet, but I had done like a little bit of meditation. So I was sort of dabbling in like a spiritual practice, and I was also dabbling in like consciousness and awareness, and it was really that trip to Greece and staying in the yoga center and kind of working there. That's where I met my partner. We both were working there, and it was like 10 years ago. And it was an intentional community, and the people that I met in the community just really helped facilitate. I mean, that entire summer facilitated a radical transformation for me. And I got on that plane and I was one person, and when I came back the next time that I sort of touched down in Philadelphia, I didn't even recognize the me from before. Such a different world, and I really felt from that experience more like myself.
Yeah.
Like I was coming more into the more truer version of myself than I had been conditioned to. Because like you say, university was kind of piggybacked on high school for me. Like it was sort of similar. I was still in a box in a way. I felt like I had more freedom in university because I was kind of out of the shackles of high school and out of the shackles of the neighborhood that I grew up in and all that stuff. So I had more freedom to be who I wanted to be. But I felt like when I traveled and when I went to Greece, then I was really had the space to start to transform into the real me, and I think I have definitely been on a transformative journey ever since.
I think you have periods, don't you, where you have almost like as you call it, like a radical transformation. So there are certain things or short periods of time, or like you said, it might even be a book that is so powerful that within that short space of time, it can flip something in you. It's like, oh my God, like, and I think you notice that change, and then you kind of plateau, if you like, and you've understood that bit, and then you keep going, and then something else comes along, and it's like, oh, and that then opens something up. And I think it's that evolution, isn't it? It's like something will just trigger, and then it might be a couple of months or even a couple of years until something else comes along, and it's like, okay, now it's another level of understanding.
Like you need that period of integration, like the plateau is sort of the integration period to just really like assimilate the lessons and just attune yourself to the new, I don't know, I would say like the new vibration, if you will, like just the new you that's kind of emerged from what just happened. But I always notice that, like, if I look at the trajectory of at least my adult life, there will be these periods of like more intense or sort of radical transformation, followed by a plateau. And then followed by, if I let the plateau go on for too long, then I can see that there's a period of like discontent. I'm just I'm just a bit like itchy and irritable and like, I'm just not happy in like the situation that I'm in, whether it's a place or the kind of work that I'm doing. And then that's usually my trigger. And I start to like think about it and look around me and say like, okay, I think I'm ready for something like bigger now. Like that's usually when I feel like I'm not having enough of a challenge in life. And that's kind of where I am right now. It's like, that's why I wanted to create the Your Year of Radical Transformation program is really born out of the fact that in my own personal life, I was starting to feel like some friction, like I needed a year of some deep work. And some deep transformative work, because it's been a few years since, even though there's been lots of traveling and things like that, and I really enjoy the work that I'm doing, I started thinking about my goals, and I was thinking, well, it's not just about like eating healthier or like exercising more. I was like, I need some goals that are like gonna make my hands sweat because I'm like nervous just thinking about them. I'm just ready to start to like, put that together. So I'd like to kind of volley the question back to you, which is like, do you have any big goals, and even like in the next year, the next 2 years, that they're kind of like the walk through fire goals, like the kind of things that like, you're a bit nervous to think about them, and if you pulled it off, you would just be like so stoked.
Yeah, I think in terms of goals, it for me, it's around the business side of stuff. But because that also represents some other stuff for me. So in the sense of what I'd really like to be doing is expanding this business in the sense of going out and really being in front of women. So I do a lot of work online, but running workshops, talking to, I would love to stand up in front of hundreds of women and talk to them and help them through, similar situations that I've been in to help give them guidance and inspiration. And for me, for some people, that might be the sweaty palm moment, might be getting up on stage. Whereas for me, I feel really at home in that place. I feel really at home on stage. Yeah. But what I struggle with is the kind of promotion bit and putting myself out there. So I was on a course last year, and we had to do a presentation at the end, and it was specifically chosen for each person. And mine was, my title was, "What would it be like to be centre stage?" Because I kind of class myself as the backstage person. Okay. So any role that I've ever had, I'm the one behind the scenes, doing stuff, sorting it all out. So even though I feel really comfortable actually doing the work, if you like, centre stage, being up there talking, it's the promoting myself, it's the recognition, it's being, strong enough, and ready to really open up and be like, yeah, do you know what, I am here, I am visible, because what I'm doing is helping people. So for me, it's about that. It's about being open enough, and really getting myself to a point of, promotion and visibility.
Yeah. And do you find that, like, in doing that, do you ever come across like some upper limit problems in kind of exposing yourself?
I think it's an interesting one. I've been trying to work out whether it's about, at first I was like, is it because I don't want to be seen as successful and how that might make other people feel? And then I was like, no, it's not about that. And then it's about, do I value myself? And I'm like, yeah, I value myself. I value what I'm doing. So trying to really work out what that is. And I think it's more about, you know, I think part of me kind of feels like, do you have to be in front of people to do you have to display everything? You know, I'm a really private person. And I don't like to let people in unless I trust them, unless I know them. So people might think that they know me. This is, you know, quite a few people say this about me. They might think they know me, but actually when they like really think about it, they don't really know much about me. So until I've got that connection with people, I find it difficult to kind of let people in. So I wonder if it's something around, you know, like being available, being open and trusting that it's okay to connect with all these people and put yourself out there and have that connection without it having to be a kind of one-on-one and trust thing.
Yes, that is definitely something that I have struggled with in the past and still am trying to integrate in my business. And I'd say like the past year to maybe like 18 months to a year, they've been the most abundant, affluent, exciting years of my business. I've been an entrepreneur for almost 8 years now, but for lots of different small businesses and some ideas that never really got kicked off the ground just because for various reasons I either didn't want to do them because they were too location based or there was too much investment to get them started in the beginning. But I was always an ideas person from the very beginning. I just loved, like, it's no surprise now that I do branding and websites and stuff like that just because I love that initial creative burst that you get, you know, when you're birthing an idea. So I spent a lot of like time kind of honing that in the first several years of my business. Even like when I was teaching yoga or dance, I was always trying to come up with new like concepts, not just like teaching a yoga class, but like what can I mix this with and what can I call it, and you know, and what will the flyers look like for the poster for this class that I'm going to put on. Like I always wanted everything to be more like experiential and brand it in a way, but I don't mean that in like a horrible sort of corporate way, but just in a cool like creative way. So I spent like the first several years doing that, and it wasn't until like a friend pointed out to me that what I was doing was like this branding process, and maybe that actually I would be good at that as a career. And I never thought about that at all because like I have a degree in psychology and women's studies. Like I was like, what am I going to make?
Why would I be doing branding?
For? Yeah. And I had actually taught myself all through, you know, the years, like how to do pretty much everything that you need to do in business just because I never had any money. So I was like, if it needs to get done, I got to bootstrap this baby. Yeah. So like if I need a website, you know, I'm not going to pay someone. I'm going to just get on YouTube and find out how to do it. So I got myself, you know, to that point. And when when that friend had suggested to me that maybe I should try doing the websites and stuff and branding stuff professionally, I sort of said, yeah, okay, and just never really looked back because as soon as I offered those services, it was right in my zone of genius. But coming back to what you said about the exposure, I mean, what I still struggle with was just like putting myself out there so much, you know, even whether it's through writing like a blog post or a video or sharing in the mailing list, because there's a desire to connect, but there's also a self-protective desire to keep some of those things for myself too.
Yeah. And I think it's hard, you know, things like Facebook or Instagram, and you see so many kind of entrepreneurs, and especially, you know, for like yourself, you are your brand. Yeah. So in order to get your brand out there, you have to share a part of you. You have to open up to let people in and see that. And so many women or, you know, entrepreneurs seem to be able to do that. And yet there's still a part of me that struggles with it. And it's not, I don't know, it's hard to even understand where that comes from. But I think it's more about, for me, is kind of step by step. So, you know, Like when I first built my website, I didn't want any, like initially to put even the tiniest picture of me on there. I was like, oh my God, like, oh my God. And now you go on my website and the first thing you see is a giant photo of me because I'm comfortable with it. So it's kind of those, you know, writing the first blog post was like, oh my God, you know, I might spend hours like thinking about what I'm going to write. And now I can write it in half an hour and send it out and it's done. But it's taken that many months to get to a position. And so I think I've kind of given up, no, not given up, but I've kind of gone, okay, I don't really know what this is about. I know it's something about letting people in, but really the only way to get over it is just to start getting more comfortable with doing it.
And combining that, I think it's important to, like, you know, take it in baby steps and just start to get more and more comfortable with it. But then also create some, like, self-care or energetic rituals around getting more exposure, you know. For me, that could be just like, I don't know, putting like a protective bubble around myself, you know, so it kind of only allows like the good energy in and deflects that like anything negative back. I think because that's maybe that's a fear of mine, is just like the more people that I'm exposed to, I feel really blessed in the fact that like the people who listen to the podcast, the people who are on my mailing list, the people who are in my orbit, whether they're reading a book of mine or reading an article or something, are just so lovely. And I think for me, there's that fear of like, oh my God, but if more people start listening, then there's going to be like the haters too. You know,
it's strange though, isn't it? Because I think actually what you tend to find, or I don't know, what I found is the more that you open up, you know, it's things like asking for help or asking for support, or, you know, in the early days of an entrepreneur, you're trying to connect with people. And actually what I've tended to find is the more that you do that, you just experience more and more like openness from other people. And it's rare that you might not get a connection with someone, or you might get a rejection, but it never feels it's painful.
Yeah. No, I'm glad that you said that. I mean, I think that's a really beautiful thing to say, and it's a place that I'm moving into with much more comfort now, is asking for help. And then the other issue was really, for me, was around vulnerability and honesty, because I went through a period of where I was teaching a lot of yoga, meditation, and writing about those kind of spiritual topics. But then there was a disconnect between the me that I felt at home and then the me who was sort of writing all this stuff and teaching all this stuff. And I kind of distanced myself from it for a while. And I'm just now coming back to it and sort of expressing myself in a more kind of open and vulnerable way. And I realized upon reflection that the reason why I distanced myself is because I was starting to feel a bit like a hypocrite or a fraud. Like there was the me at home that would sometimes struggle from self-doubt or anxiety or, you know, whatever like I classified at the time as a negative emotion. But then there was also the me that was teaching or writing, you know, and sort of telling people how to live a better life. And I think I needed to distance myself to sort of integrate and realize that there was a lot of gold, you know, gold dust in the dark clouds that I felt from time to time in my own life. And that, you know, what better thing to do than to share that with other people who may be struggling with a similar issue or self-doubt or, you know, negative thought or something like that. So
definitely. I think the value is in your experience. And, you know, I always write from a place of stuff that I've either been through or, you know, I send out a weekly email, and sometimes my emails are written from the place that I am at that day because it still has value to people. They might not be in exactly the same situation, but they're going through something similar. And I think it's you know, it's not pretending that, you know, when you're coaching people or you're trying to help people, that you have all the answers or that you're perfect and that you've got, you know, you've dealt with this and you've moved on. Because I think everything comes back again. It just comes back in a different way. or on a different level. So I think there's so much value in sharing, and not, like you said about negative emotion, it's kind of like, well, are any emotions negative?
Yeah.
Like some of them might make you feel in a way that you don't want to feel. But if we make them negative, then we kind of reject them. And actually, you know, that pain, that fear, all those kind of things that you might associate as negative, they're what we've got to go through to then get to the other stuff. So if we're just rejecting them, we're kind of pushing them away, then we're not going to deal with it. So I'm definitely with you on like being transparent and, you know, being honest and open about it. And I think that's why I connected, you know, with you in the first place, because the aim of this podcast is very much around, you know, being real about what's going on. And when I talk about my business and, you know, with my friends, I'm so honest about how it's going and some of the struggles I've had and then some of the successes, and, you know, and I think people can then connect with you because of that honesty and that transparency.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's wonderful that you said that. It's just, that's exactly how I feel, you know, and I want to create a space for honesty and, you know, for sharing everything, you know, along the whole continuum, as business owners and as women as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not just about, you know, business owners. All the stuff is just, you're just experiencing it in one situation, and other people, you know, experience it in so many other ways. And I think what we're kind of seeing now, or I feel like we're seeing in the past couple of years, is a real rise in people sharing their experiences, whether it's through, you know, blog articles or even through some kind of, you know, other social media stuff. People are really starting to share what's happened to them, and being able to have more honest and open conversations. I think that's really important, because usually when you struggle, it's because you feel like you're going through something on your own, and it's like, no, so many other people have gone through it or are going through it, who are there to help support you.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think, is there like a particular like mindset shift or technique that you would use to work with clients who are maybe in like a difficult time, you know, and are ready to sort of are ready to like break out of an old pattern, let's say?
Yeah, so there's quite a few different things. One of the things that I'm a really big fan of is just a simple thing like journaling. So I started journaling probably about 2 years ago. I don't write every day. I just pick it up when I feel like I need to. Because for me, writing is a way to get some stuff out. But
Yes.
The whole point, what I think is really important, is that we're so busy all the time, is that we never have the space, and I know that I was guilty of this, never really have the space or the time to reflect. So we're not really looking at what's happened. We're not really learning from things, and which is why we start hitting the same barriers again and again, because we've not really looked back and said, okay, what's going on here? You know, whether it's in your relationship, your job, whatever it is. And so, and then also using that then to say, okay, what is it that I really want? And something that I'm a real massive fan of is going after the feeling. So I don't know if you've read, I think you probably have, but The Desire Map by Danielle LaPorte. Yeah, I mean, that probably was the book that just changed so much for me.
Oh, me too.
Massive shift, because when I was reading it, it felt like I already knew this stuff, but somebody said it out loud, so it was like boom, like oh. And she talks, for those people that haven't read it, but she talks about the importance of how you want to feel. So focusing not on what you want and what you think you want, but understanding what the feeling is you're going after. So what she kind of says is that anything you want, whether it's that pair of shoes, that house, that relationship, that partner, the reason you want it is not for the thing. It's not the material thing. It's because of the feeling it's going to give you. So she talks about, instead of setting goals around, okay, I need to do this and I need to achieve this, she goes back to, okay, what are the core, she calls them core desire feelings, but what are the key feelings that you want and work out your kind of life around those, and your daily life around getting more of that feeling, because the more you get that feeling, the more that you're going to then kind of attract and recreate that feeling. So when I talk to people about, career or lifestyle, and it's like defining what success is for them, because so much is about, okay, well, I want to climb that ladder, or I want to earn this much, or I want to be responsible for this and that and that. And we don't really know why we want it. It's just kind of because that's what's been installed in us, or I've seen this and that's what I think I want. And when you really look at why
success either.
Yeah. No, it's kind of, success is, wow, whatever society, describes it, defines it as. Yeah. So, maybe success these days might be around being a successful entrepreneur, an entrepreneur that makes loads of money or has a huge impact or whatever. But until you define for yourself what success looks like, then you're never going to feel satisfied. And it's coming back to that success is not about the things. It is about achieving stuff, but because of the feeling it's going to give you. So until you understand why you want it, what's driving you, what's the feeling, then it's always going to be hit and miss whether what you achieve and what you're aiming for is actually going to give you the satisfaction you want.
Yeah. I think that book for me was so super powerful. The concept is super powerful. Every single day I write my core desired feelings down.
Yeah.
It's the driving force for absolutely everything that I do, every quote unquote goal that I'm working towards personally or in my business. They all have a core desired feeling behind them, and that was such a huge shift for me. And actually in the program that I'm putting together at the new year, so 2016, we're doing a virtual desire map retreat, which I'm super excited about.
Wow.
So I think it's the best way, to start the new year is calling in some core desired feelings.
Yeah, definitely. It is such a mindset shift. And I think it's hard now because when I think about it, it seems so natural and it seems so obvious. And yet when you talk to the people about it, it still feels like a foreign concept.
Yeah.
But it's the book that I send to like all my friends, anyone that's kind of particularly in a feeling of, I'd call it maybe like discontent or stagnation, and you're just kind of like, you don't know what's wrong, but things just don't feel right. And I think that's when you're disconnected because you don't know what it is that you want. And it's like, I've got all this stuff, or things seem to be going well from like an outsider's perspective, but inside it just doesn't feel like it's enough. Yeah. And I think when you really start to go then into the, okay, well, what are the core desired feelings? What is it that I'm after? That's when you can start making those shifts. And like you say, when you plan your goals around it, or the little tasks about recreating those feelings, it makes it so much easier. It just makes it just feels natural.
Yeah. I did the same. I bought 15 books and then just started giving them out to friends. I had a box of them in my house and I was just like, you need a desire map.
You have to read it. I know. I think everyone's like, all right, chill out.
I was giving them out like candy. Here you go. You need one, and you need one too.
Yeah.
Well, besides the desire map, were there any other books that you really love that were sort of transformative to you, or that you recommend to anyone, anyone else?
Yeah, anything by Seth Godin. Absolutely love Seth Godin.
Yeah.
I started reading him quite a few years ago now. My brother gave me the book. The first one that I read was Linchpin. And that really had quite a powerful effect, because Seth Godin, in my eyes, is an absolute genius. Everything he writes, it just really, I just feel it resonates with me.
Yeah.
But what he really talks about is owning your skills, owning your strengths, owning who you are. He talks very much around in a business world, but he talks a lot about leadership. But particularly in Linchpin, he looks at, okay, well, how can you become the person that everybody kind of needs, that people are drawn towards by just being who you are, and really owning what it is that you want to do. And he very much talks around kind of, leadership without being at the top of the ladder. And he talks about connection. He's such a, his real focus is around connection and community, and how important that is in what he calls the new economy, which is no longer around, industrial kind of hierarchical organizations, but it's about connecting with people. And that's, not just for business, but I used to send that book out at work, send it going around to all these people, because the way he talks connects on so many different levels. But he's so interesting. And he writes in such a, a simple way, and he talks about, I love it when he talks about reptile brain and, focusing on what you want and not what you don't want. And he talks about
brain sort of driven by fear, you mean?
Fear and resistance. And reptile brain says, I don't want to move out my comfort zone. I'm so comfortable. So anything else is just fear. But this brain is what it doesn't realize is that actually the whole world around you is changing and evolving and growing. And if you stay as you are, then actually you're in a more of a risky, if you like, a more dangerous situation, because you're not growing with the world that's going around you. And it's like, we've seen it so many times, but organizations, it's the same thing. So and it's the same, with businesses, small businesses, but if you don't adapt to your environment and start to stretch your comfort zone, then you are in a more dangerous position, because you're not responding to what's going on around you, and actually you're getting left behind.
Okay, yeah, interesting.
Really interesting. And I think finally the other one, which is a book that I came across only a couple of months ago, but I read it while I was traveling on